This is Game On, discussing the biggest games and all the latest sports news with Johnny Montalbano and Hank and Dichter on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
It's showtime, folks. It's episode 53 of Game On here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. I'm Johnny Montalbano. That's Nick Morgasen. Nick, good to see you today. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Hopefully we can make it through without technical issues.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes. This is take 3 for us here. But, Nick, it's good to see you. Filling in for Hank today, and Nick comes aboard on a pretty big show as always here. As we've got a lot to get to as we usually do, but of course, folks, we want to hear from you as well. Several ways for you to get aboard. You can check us out on our social media channels. We're on Facebook and Twitter at GameOnETB. We're on Instagram at GameOn_ETB. Our personal handle is right there. I'm at Montalbano NY. Nick is at N Morgasen Radio. And of course, check us out on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network, where if you like today's episode, leave us a like. If you're new, make sure if you're new to hit the subscribe button. And as always, have your notifications set so you know when all of our programming is going to be coming out. Now, the MMA Outsiders, Fruity Cereal, her show, and of course, Nick and Tom over at the main event, Empty the Bench. And of course, you can also check us out on our audio-only platforms, wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. So plenty of ways to not only interact with the show, but to listen, watch, all that said. Nick, we've got a lot to get to over the course of the show here today. We've got NBA playoffs. We've got a head coach fired in the NBA. We've got Stanley Cup playoffs. We've got a head coach fired in the NHL. We've got some baseball regarding the New York Yankees, not in a good way, and we're going to get to that. And we even do have some not only the winner, but a lot of stuff leading up to the Kentucky Derby. We've got an investigation where 7 horses died at Churchill Downs. Kind of a story that we've heard before. If you remember going back to the Santa Anita days, we've got the favorite, where we had the favorite heading into the Derby on Saturday. Forte gets scratched, which may field for the Derby in a few years. So a lot to get to over the course of the show. But, Nick, we've got to tip things off here with the NBA playoffs, which, the first round had some upsets and some craziness. Well, we're starting to head down that road possibly again, because we've got 2 series that are tied at 2 apiece that are about to tip off as we are airing this show. We've got the Heat over the Knicks right now. They were up 2-1 heading into Monday night. And we got the Lakers leading the Warriors 2-1 heading into Monday night as well. So a possibility about the number 8 seeded Miami Heat advance east, and you've got possibly a lower seed heading out of the West there between the Lakers and the Warriors. But let's start with the 2 series that are going to tip off tonight as this show is premiering. Sixers-Celtics and Suns-Nuggets. And Nick, the Sixers-Celtics series started out with Embiid for the Sixers in game 1. And I think when that happened, you didn't really get Philadelphia. It was hard to give Philadelphia a chance without the reigning MVP, with the current MVP there in Embiid. But you look at this series so far, and when James Harden, your former buddy there with the Brooklyn Nets, when he step up, he did so in game 1, they won. In game 4, he did it again, and they won. Now, they got a little bit lucky there at the end because there was some poor clock management there from Boston's side. But you look at this Sixers team, and they're giving, to me, the best team in the Eastern Conference a good run for their money right now. And this is all of a sudden now a best of 3.
Yeah, this series has been good. Everyone thought Boston was going to run away with this whole series, and Philly was not going to put up a fight. By the way, Joel Embiid, obviously MVP, the NBA, well-deserved. I really didn't want to see Jokic win a 3rd straight MVP. I thought that would have been ridiculous considering the big year that Embiid had. By the way, if these were the rules of the coming CBA agreement and also the agreement they made with load management, Joel Embiid or Jokic would have been ineligible to be the MVP this year anyway. So you had all that. Harden has come out and just owned it. I can't believe I'm saying this. Owned it in the playoffs for the most part so far, hitting big shots. Hitting the big shot to send, I think he hit the big shot to send them into overtime also, for them to have the chance to win game 4. I'm actually having legitimate thoughts that the Sixers could win this series. I really do. Because Boston is, I don't know what to say about the Celtics right now. They play good, they have their moments, and then there's some days where they just don't have it whatsoever. They're a very like hill and valley type team. You don't know what to expect.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that's actually been one of the biggest surprises so far this postseason, because I thought they showed their dominance at times against the Heat. Against the Hawks in round 1. At times they showed their dominance here against the Sixers, and that has not, and at times that has not been the case. I mean, this to me was for Boston to get through, but you give Doc Rivers in Philadelphia a lot of credit, because Doc's been through a lot here in his career, especially in the playoffs. He's been criticized a lot, but he is definitely, got to give him some credit here with how he's taken this Sixers team, which not many people thought we're going to give them a chance against Boston, especially when you found out that Joel Embiid was not going to play in game 1. And again, Harden put them on their back and won game 1 and game 4 too. And all of a sudden now there's a best of 3, to the point now where you look at the rest of the series, and I don't think there's really a lot of pressure on Philadelphia. I think all the pressure right now is on Boston when you look at it.
Yes. And on top of that whole thing where, and I can't remember, what's the Celtics like? Joe Mazzulla, I think, is the head coach of the Celtics now.
Yes.
I don't like the way he's been handling the media. I don't like the way that he's been talking. He's very, I guess what they say, traditional coach, where he's just going to keep doing the same thing and hope that it works. And he basically was coming up to me and say, I'm not the best coach. And like, you know what? That's quitter talk, if you ask me, as a head coach. Doc Rivers has been down this road many times. Even though this series is 2-2, Doc Rivers has coached circles around Mazzulla so far in this series, making the right calls, making the right substitutions, having the right strategies. I really do think with Doc, I think he's going to find a way to pull this series out with the Sixers. Now, the thing you have to be careful with is, will James Harden have a game like he did in Houston in that game 7, where, what do you go, like 0 for 18 or 0 for 20? And like
he went 0 for
an 0 for 10, like from 3, and the Houston was like 0 for like 30 something from 3-point range. I mean, like, that's the thing you got to be careful with. But I think the Sixers are a much better built team in that regard, who can put the ball down in the paint. In my opinion, Embiid should never have played. What was it, game 2? They forced him to play, or game 3? It might have been game 3. Like, they forced him to play game 3 when he was hurt. They should have just sat him out and had him be ready for when they were traveling on the road. That would have been an extra 2 days of rest, not playing. So I think the Sixers will pull that out. I do.
So just looking at the if you look at the series so far, and you were talking about Harden's his game 7 struggles there with Houston. That's the thing too. You look at this series. Is he going to have a 16 for 23 game in game 4 like he had in game 4? Or are we going to see the Harden of games 2 and 3, where in game 2 he went 2 of 14, and in game 3 he went 3 of 14?
Yeah, I'm not expecting much. I'd be careful, like leaning on Harden for a clutch performance.
It's kind of funny because we're going to get to this in the West too, but you look at probably the most inconsistent player, or one moment has and the next day has a dud, and that, like Anthony Davis there with the Lakers, and now you see it here with Harden and the Sixers. It could be, as he goes, the team goes. So if he has, I mean, there's going to be no coincidence that in game 5 and 6, let's say he has a superstar performance, they're going to win, and if not, they play a dud.
Right. But at the same time, and most people would never say this, but I actually think that Harden and Embiid are opposites that don't attract in that sense. Usually you have a guy who's a role guy who can shoot the 3, shoots from range, can get into the paint and be aggressive. And then you have Embiid, who's a center who wants to be aggressive down paint, but shoots long range. Like, the two don't really fit together on a team. Embiid is the guy but Harden is the one that's touching the ball all the time. So there's not a clear strategy for this team who they want on the ball or who they want putting the ball in the paint. They just don't have it.
Yeah. And it's funny because you look at Boston too. One thing you notice with the Celtics here is they don't play deep rotation. I mean, they play 8 guys, it seems like, a night. And, it's going to be something we're going to talk about with the Knicks in a couple of minutes here about the fact that they don't play a deep rotation. But, yeah. And this is – so now all of a sudden this series could be going – it could look like a 7-game series. And I tell you, the more I think about it, Nick, I think it's not crazy to think that the Sixers are going to pull this out. And I would have said you would have been nuts beforehand, especially without Embiid in game 1. But it's been the Harden show. They've also had some moments. Reed, their backup center, did play well in game 1, stepped up in a big way. You saw in game 4 they had guys that stepped up too. Also, let's be fair, they also did get pretty lucky there at the end. A half-second difference is what really could also turn this whole series around. If Celtics get that shot off a half second earlier, we're talking about 3-1 Boston. And then this is a totally different conversation we're talking about on the show today. Which
is crazy because, like I said, the Celtics, and here's the issue I have. Like, everybody, oh my God, the Celtics, the best team. Can we stop? Like, the Celtics the last couple of years, even though they've been at the top, they've been a 1 seed a few times, they're not finishing in the playoffs. Right now, they're a regular season number 1 seed, is what I call it. They're not a playoff 1 seed and playing like one. They got to win. They're not making it to the end. Yeah, now, I know they made it that 1 year, but right now, like, even though I like Tatum, I think will be a face of the league one day. But there are times when he goes cold still. So,
yeah.
I like Jaylen Brown also, by the way. I think he's a great role player. I wouldn't say he's an all-star by any means. He's a really good player. He fits in with that team. I don't know if you put him on another team, if he would really fit with the chemistry of another team. And who am I forgetting? The
Marcus Smart,
who I like. I like that he's a gritty player. We don't see very many gritty NBA players anymore because of the rules. You're not allowed to be gritty NBA player anymore. But he kind of reminds me, and this is going to sound odd, but just follow my logic. He reminds me a little bit of Ron Artest. Because Ron Artest could score at will when he wanted to, but like DeMarcus Smart, really good defensive player in every way, shape, or form. Defensive player of the year. But DeMarcus Smart could also score and put up 30 at any given moment, and you would be like, wait, I didn't know he could put up 30. Yeah, because when he gets his moments, he's going to put the ball in the basket. So.
Well, I think... I tell you, I look at the rest of the series, and but when we're back here next week, we will have a result. It's really all going to. I know it comes down to this: if Harden's going to go off like he's been going off, then the Sixers are going to win the series.
Yes.
If he lays another dud, I think Boston will pull it out. That being said, boy, I don't know, because if this does go 7, all the pressure in the world is going to be on Boston. Now, I mean, of course, At the same time, you could say, you look at the Sixers side, can Doc Rivers get over the hump? Can James Harden get over the hump? I get that. But if you're the Celtics and, the Bucks got knocked out in the first round, it looked like you were in a very favorable spot.
Yes, and we'll get to a whole situation with the Bucks in a little bit. Yeah, but the Bucks were a disappointment. The Bucks should have gone through way further than they played. Again, another good regular season team. They proved themselves. They won a title with Giannis, keyword. Even when Giannis is not healthy, that team does not roll at all. And then I always forget the second guy who's the star on that team. I don't know why I keep forgetting. Middleton. I keep forgetting because he doesn't play as much. He's getting hurt. So on that team, when they both play together, it is a championship winning team.
Yeah.
But when they're both hurt, they're beatable.
And and I said this on the show last week, Nick. You look at the Miami Heat. To me, they're an 8 seed in number only, because I actually think they're. And look, I'm a Knicks fan. We're going to get to this in a couple moments. I actually was not really that comfortable playing Miami, and we've seen that. There have been times that Miami's just stifled the Knicks. Miami is kind of an old school kind of basketball team when you look at it, because they're not fast. They take their time with the ball. a lot of the shot clock, and they've got a star. You know what? Miami very quietly for an 8 seed has a star. They've got Jimmy Butler. They've got good role players, and they're doing this without Tyler Hero, which is incredible. And again, we'll get to the series in just a second. But Miami's an 8 seed and number only. They've been able to, shock a lot of teams, and it's just we don't see this in the NBA because usually home court means something. Usually, if you're a 1 seed, it's because you've got a star player and they produce. I mean, that's what it is. It's only been 6 times in NBA history where an 8 seed is upset a 1 seed.
Right. And on top of that, Tom Albano from the show I do on ETB came up with a great stat. I think it was this round, first time in history maybe, that the seeds were all 1 through 8 that made it through. And, it's a rarity. You don't see that ever.
Mm-hmm. No, it's extremely rare.
But just looking at some of these series where, especially Miami and the Knicks, which, like you said, sometimes a seed is only a number. And you look at Miami. Miami is actually a pretty good team. People don't give them enough credit over the season. I know they had injuries. I know Tyler Hero was hurt. I think Duncan Robinson was hurt at one point.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler. By the way, of all stars in the league, Jimmy Butler plays through injuries. I don't want to hear it because what was it, game 2 that or was it game? I don't remember which game it was. Game 3 that he played through the leg injury, basically was hobbling around on the court.
Yeah.
And they still won because he stayed out on the floor.
Well, let's also remember just in the Knicks Heat series, he gets hurt in game 1. It doesn't seem like they miss a beat. He doesn't play in game 2, and
they lost.
Yeah, and maybe he would have played if they didn't win game 1. They kind of gave him that break because they stole home court advantage, and then he comes back and then he's active for game 3 and he goes off. I mean, no coincidence there. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't use injuries as an excuse.
By the way, and I know people give Jimmy Butler a bad rap. People should be following Jimmy Butler's example. The only time he sits out is when he's legitimately hobbled over and can't walk.
Yeah, you think Philadelphia wants him back?
Maybe. I mean, I think he's a better fit for Philadelphia than James Harden at times. But
yeah,
because James Harden is kind of like a shoot and run type guy.
I think you're right. I think Harden's a one-dimensional player. I think Butler's a multi-dimensional player.
Also, he'll pass the ball. Now, let me be careful because Harden, I think, a couple of years in the league, led the league in assists, if I'm not mistaken. But Jimmy Butler is a team guy. People give him a bad rap because he basically went where the money was, even though Miami's not a bad place to be and they're a good team for most years. But he proved being the all-star and the veteran to get that team up and going. They were not supposed to be this far in the playoffs. It's him that's making that team go.
Mm-hmm.
So people just got to relax. I mean, I think Miami's now going to win this series, to be honest. But
yeah, and I'll get to that series in just a moment here. But I just had to make that comparison there. But yeah, so I think, Nick, the way things are looking right now, I think Sixers and Celtics is going 7. I think the way it is, and gosh, I tell you, if it does come down to a game 7, you almost have to give Doc Rivers the advantage because the coach hasn't been through this before.
Right. And I told you, I don't like the energy of Missoula. I think he's it's kind of inexperience as a head coach. Now, let me be careful because people are going to say, well, you did have Ime Udoka. You had to fire him. I don't want to hear these excuses anymore. Ime Udoka is going to get it. I think he actually got a job, with Houston now?
Houston, yeah.
Which he went from being in the ceiling to the gutter, but that's a whole different issue for another day. But Missoula is a young coach. He has not been here before, at least as a head coach. So, one, I guess you got to cut him some slack, even though it is the playoffs. But he's got to control himself in front of the media.
Yeah.
Big time.
And the outside of the team as Boston does have.
Right.
It does. That's where we start seeing the coaching make a big difference. Sometimes you can survive that in the regular season, but in the playoffs, it's a whole different story. So I think it goes 7. And I still want to give the Celtics the advantage, but I got to tell you, I mean, the way things are, it's hard to say that. But I think we are looking at a 7-game series there between the Sixers and the Celtics. But the others, I'll tell you what, though, as much as I'm surprised about that, I'm equally as surprised about the Suns and the Nuggets being tied at 2 because the Nuggets jump out and win the first 2 games. Then we find out that Chris Paul got hurt again in the playoffs and didn't play in Game 3. And I really thought that this was going to be the golden chance for Denver to pull away in this series. But you know what? You have to give Phoenix credit too. That the tough part about the Suns this year is you want to talk about Booker and Durant and play a lot together. And Durant even pretty much said that after Game 4 that, they're still trying to find their chemistry together. But the thing is, at the same time, Jokic can do it all, and it's still not enough. He has games where he goes off for 39 and 16 like we've seen in the series. We saw him in Game 4 go off for 53, but if Jamal Murray is not following suit, it's a one-person show. And nobody, and I don't care who you are, there is no superstar that can single-handedly win a series anymore. That's the reality. LeBron, even you can say that about LeBron. LeBron, who took the Cavs to the finals against the Spurs, couldn't get it done. I mean, we did see, him with Kyrie there come back from 3-1 down against the Warriors. We get that, but Kyrie also did contribute in a big way in that series too. But it's hard when it's just one person.
I mean, it's ironic that you say that, considering James Harden tried to do it with Houston all those years. I mean, that's why they tried to bring in Chris Paul, ironically, to it. And let's see how that worked out. Oops, it didn't work out in Game 7. But I don't know. The Suns, and people are going to throw stuff at me, but I don't think the Suns are as good as people say they are. And we say this a lot. Well, look at all the names. Look at all on paper. Okay, people forget something here. You don't play the games on what?
Paper.
Okay. We don't play the games on paper. So you got to play the games to win. You could draw up on, or my favorite is people make this joke. Well, if you simulate this series this amount of times, for the most part, it's going to come out a certain. Well, yeah, because the percentages tell you that based on a roster, a team's going to win. But if you don't play the games in reality, you don't know what's going to happen.
And Nick, the one thing to that point is you could simulate these games all you want. They don't factor in the chemistry, because you can have all those names. Chemistry is so big. I mean, everybody was talking about when my Knicks had Carmelo, Stoudemire, that should have been a team that was good enough to go all the way. And you know what? They never gelled. That's it. A chemistry is so important. You can have all the names in the world, but you know what? If they don't produce, if they don't have the chemistry, then it's not going to get it done.
And you know what? The Suns actually did the Nets a favor. Now, Nets fans are going to hate me for saying that, but they did them a favor because there's a bunch of young pieces on that organization that are going to get destroyed by the ego of KD, in my opinion. And I actually think it was worse. Even though the Suns needed somebody to make the team better, KD and Booker are very odd when it comes to their own egos and their own power trips and the way they handle stuff. I don't know if that's exactly a good gel when it comes to chemistry, Durant and Booker. Are they great players? Are they all-stars? Yes. But KD needs to touch the ball a lot. Him and Harden, and I always laugh at this because people try to compare Harden to KD or vice versa. They both touch the ball. They're touch ball players is what I call them. They have to always have the ball in their hands to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed also with Durant got hurt again. Durant's starting to get that reputation of being hurt a lot. So I don't know. This series is kind of up in the air. I thought as soon as the Nuggets won the first two games, I thought this was going to be a blowover because the Suns just have no chemistry and are falling apart. But somehow they managed to win the next two games. So again, it comes down to who had the home field. So the Nuggets are going to have the last 2 out of 3 games.
Yes,
I think home court is going to decide this. So I think this is probably going to go 7 also.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that it is. I really thought that that Denver was going to take this series pretty handily. But yeah, it's been you look at two big wins by Denver at home, and then 2 close wins by Phoenix at home. That's what we've seen so far. But also, Devin Booker has definitely turned it up these last 2 games. 47 and 36 in games 3 and 4, and
But that's another issue, though. So the other issue you're going to run into, though, is if they don't score, then the biggest issue is the bench and the second unit with the Suns. Because if Booker doesn't put up 40, if Durant doesn't put up 30 or 40, Chris Paul is now out. I think he's going to miss. What did they say? He's going to miss 3 and 4, so he'll probably be back for 5. If they don't score, they're not going to win. That's just how it is. The Suns have been like this. If you look back throughout the decade or the last 2 decades, they're a run and score team, and they don't play defense at all. That goes all the way back to Mike D'Antoni being the head coach of the Suns.
Yeah, and Mike D'Antoni could be the guy that started this whole transformation in the NBA about the 3-point shot, the offense, no defense,
or shooting in the first 6 seconds of the shot clock.
Yeah, that's been it. So I mean, if you looked at influential people in the NBA, as much as you want to talk about Steph Curry, it really was D'Antoni who started all of that.
Well,
it's just Curry just absolutely, he's the one that just puts those unbelievable shots together.
I mean, so you're right. I would say Curry started the 3-point revolution, but I would say that D'Antoni started the run and gun part of basketball. Hey, if you can catch a team that's not on the run back when you get the rebound in the first 6-7 seconds of shot clock, that's your best time to score. Even though I don't believe that all the time. Sometimes you have to be able to play in the half-court set if you're trailing to build on and build a streak of points. But I don't know. I don't think the Suns win this series. I think this is going to go 7. And I think it's going to end in Denver.
Well, see, here's when I look at the rest of the series, here's what I would look at. Can Jokic get enough from Murray, or is Booker and Durant going to get enough to complement each other? Like, which team is going to get the complementary second player? Now, with the Phoenix, you could say either Booker's that second player or Durant is. I still think it's Booker's team, but who's going to get more out of their second player? Is it going to be Denver with Murray, or is it going to be Phoenix with Durant?
I mean, if I'm going to go on track record, Denver has not proven themselves yet. So I think it's going to be the Suns just because Denver cannot finish in the playoffs right now. They have not proven it. They were a number 1 seed the past couple of years, and they have not gotten out of the second round. So even though I'm not enamored with the Suns by any means, but I just don't think Denver has not proven it yet.
And that's why I gave the Lakers and the Warriors a shot to get out of the West this year, because I agree with you. I don't know if Denver has enough to get out of the whole Western Conference. I mean, Jokic is great, but as much as it's about your stars, you need that second player. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a superstar, but it needs to be a good enough player to get it done. And a lot of these teams have that, but I don't know if Denver does. And again, that's good enough in the regular season. We don't know if it's good enough in the postseason. And the conferences, we've talked about this a lot on the show, how much the conferences have flip-flopped, how the West is now not that strong of a conference and the East is. It used to always be the other way around.
Right. And I would say Jokic putting up 53 points and losing is not good. No. Your star put up 53 points and you lost the damn game. You can't do that. Like, if he's putting up 53 points and you're not winning the game, what else can he freaking do to lead that team to victory?
Well, you got to get. I mean, I'm just going to look at the box score here real quick. When you look at, first off, they're only playing 8 players, and one of them played less than 10. And that's something we're going to get to with the Knicks in just a second here. But if you look at them, now he did get 28 points from Jamal Murray. That's the thing here too. So of Denver's 104 points that they got, 124 points, I should say, they got it in Game 4. 81 of them were from Jokic and Murray. It's amazing. They have no bench whatsoever. It's all the starting lineup.
Right. Denver's never had a bench.
And the thing is, in the NBA playoffs, teams that usually have a deep enough roster are the ones that go far. So your starting 5 can be fantastic, but what's one of the things that the Knicks actually had an advantage over the Cleveland Cavaliers in the last series? They had a deeper team. They had a bench. As much as the starting 5 was the advantage was with Cleveland, they didn't have a deep enough team, and the Knicks did. And now we're seeing that I don't think the Knicks have a deep enough team here against Miami. We're going to get to that series in just a second here. But I watch here. So the Nuggets, who are playing pretty much, if you look at it, a 7-man group, and you look at the you look at Phoenix here, and it's Durant, it's Booker, it's Shamet, who had 19 points in 30 minutes. So I mean, that's something to watch here.
Right.
Shamet came off the bench, played 30 minutes, and scored 19 points. So that's what I'm saying right there. Right there, you give Phoenix the advantage.
Yes, you would give the Suns the advantage, you would think, because they're going to run a deeper bench. But if, like I said, if Durant and Booker don't score, it's not going to matter how deep your bench is.
Yeah, that's true. That's fast. It's a fascinating thing out there between the Suns and the Nuggets, and those games will be played on Tuesday. And when we're here next week, that series ends up. Now, the Heat and the Knicks, we're recording this on Monday, so it was 2-1 going into Game 4 Monday night. The one thing I'll say about this as a Knicks fan, you look at the series so far, and Jimmy Butler's killing the Knicks, there's no question. But what's also killing the Knicks is themselves. And when I say that, I'm talking about their shooting, their shots, and they cannot convert. Here's the bottom line. When I watched Game 3 leading into the Derby, I thought, oh, you know what? Had a long day. Let me kick back. 3:30, great start time leading into the Derby, right? So I was looking so forward to watching this game. But I watched R.J. Barrett. I watched Jalen Brunson shoot a combined 31%. You can't win like that.
Nope.
You cannot win. Also, we talk about the NBA, how this is a 3-point league. Knicks went 8 of 40 from 3-point range. It was their worst. It was the most misses they had in a playoff game in their franchise history.
Yeah.
Can't win like that, Nick. I mean,
no,
that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, and you and I have had this conversation. I've been listening and watching a lot of the Knicks playoff games. I mean, to be honest, though, I think they took way too many threes in the series against the Cavaliers. But since the Cavaliers were just on such a poor offensive streak in that series, that's why the Knicks were able to pull away and win that series. Also, Donovan Mitchell looked like a mess, but that's a whole different story for another day. You can't get away with long stretches of offense not happening against Miami. Miami is going to score. Jimmy Butler is going to score. So, and Miami's going to play more defense than the Cavaliers are going to play. So, I think I even said to you in passing while we were watching these games, the Knicks are shooting too many threes.
Yeah.
They're can't
shooting
win
too many, and they're not making it. Also, doesn't it seem like they shoot quick and Miami does not?
Miami, ironically, knows how to play the half-court set. That's what they're going to do. The Knicks need to play more of the half-court set. And also, you would think with younger, fresher legs that they'd be running this Miami team up and down the court. They're not doing it.
Yeah. Bothered me also about Game 3 was, you had 4 days off because remember they had that extra time off because they were trying to get the other series to catch up to them because they started while some series were still ending the first round. They played Game 1 Sunday, Game 2 on Tuesday, and then they had 4 days off before they played Game 3. So that's what really just bothered me is that you had 4 days off, and this is the kind of crap that you saw in Game 3. The fact that they're hoisting up shots. Their big players are not scoring and shooting terribly. Now, the Knicks had not been really a good 3-point shooting team this season, but it gets magnified that much more in the playoffs. And when you're rushing your shots, and you look at Miami, who always looks like they're taking the shot clock down to the last 8 or 7 seconds, and then they're converting. I mean, that's not a good combination. And also, one other thing that this series has shown, too, is free throw shooting, too, has been the difference.
Right. I mean, when you look at this series, when the Knicks panic, they put up more threes, not less. And that's not just a case that's a case of what we said, like with Steph Curry, shoot the three, shoot the three, shoot the three. The Knicks are not in that mode. They're not the best 3-point shooting team. So forcing more of them up is going to make it worse, and it makes the lead get bigger, not smaller. But everyone thinks that with the 3-point range of today, we'll just make it up in 2 minutes if we score 6 or 7 threes, and we'll be fine. The Knicks don't operate that way. They're a big man type team in the paint, and they just don't operate. First of all, Barrett's got to stop overshooting. Just overshooting.
And that it looked like he was starting to finally fix that towards the last week or two of the season and then into the Cleveland series. And now it looks like it's right back to the old ways. This is looking a lot like the Hawks series of 2 years ago.
Right. And then Trae Young just totally obliterated them.
Absolutely. And Jimmy Butler, minus the antics of Young, Jimmy Butler is like Trae Young in the series.
I mean, again, if Jimmy Butler plays in game 2, I don't think the Knicks would have won a game in this series.
I agree. I say it as a Knicks fan, and there's a reason why I was not confident about them playing Miami. Now, there are some people that you see on sports radio that got to be very cocky and say the Knicks can make the finals now. I'm like, guys, you cannot overlook the Miami Heat here. Just because they're an 8th seed, there's a reason why they're in this spot. They took out the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference in the Milwaukee Bucks.
And let's be careful about one thing.
Star player in Giannis that the Knicks don't have anything anywhere near.
Let's be careful about one thing though. Like, even though like people are saying like Miami beat Milwaukee the 1 seed, though, if I had to give them one thing, obviously Giannis was not healthy for one part of that. Not that I'm giving the Bucks an excuse for losing the series, but it obviously didn't help. If Giannis is healthy, that series goes a different way, in my opinion. And if Middleton is healthy, that series goes a different way. Because we've seen those two guys lead a team all the way to the finals and win. But Miami is no slouch whatsoever. Miami might have a chance to go to the finals this year again, the way they're playing.
You could, if Miami gets past the Knicks, I could easily give them a chance against Milwaukee, against Boston, and/or Philadelphia.
First of all, I think Miami could outrun Philadelphia, especially James Harden, Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, who's got injuries still. I don't think he's 100% healthy by any means. So I think they could beat Philadelphia. Celtics, that would be an interesting series because those two can run each other up and down the court. And it's a battle of attrition at that point to see who can stay out there longer. So,
yeah. I mean, if the Knicks hit their shots, then they could be in the series. But we don't know what the result of game winning this. But I would imagine that if we're seeing more of what we've seen with them and Butler's continuing to go up and down and kill the Knicks, this series is not going to go more than 5 at this point. And again, Jalen Brunson, who's been fantastic all season, to have a rough game 1 and a rough game 3, no coincidence. Julius Randle, who I think is trying way too hard sometimes. And, I'm not trying to be an oxymoron or contradict because, there are times where, you question it and then it's like he's trying too hard, but, his shots have been off. I mean, when you look at the Knicks here, Josh Hart's has been the savior, really, when you look at it. And again, that was such an under the radar kind of pickup at the trade deadline, but he has been so great for them. And he seemed to be the only one that actually had a good game in game 3 there on Saturday in Miami.
Right, and the Knicks got blown out, like in the worst way you could possibly get blown out.
It wasn't close. I mean, before you blinked, they were down double digits, and they just never got into it. I mean, I was waiting. You know what I was waiting for? In typical Knicks fashion, they would be down 15, go on this tremendous run to cut it to 3, and then you're like, bam, all right, we're back at it. And then you know what happens? Boom, before you blink, it's back to 10 or 15 because you spend all your energy in the world to come back to, and then you're completely exhausted, and Miami goes right back down and makes it a double-digit game again. I mean, let's be honest. As a Knicks fan, how many times have we seen that in the 21st century that, they'd be down 20 or 30 points, they make a huge run to make it close, and then it's right back into square one again.
I mean, it would have been tough. Even if they won this round, it would have been tough after this round to get to the finals, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, be happy. This is the first time we made it to the second round in how long?
It's been 10 years since 2012, 2013 that they got to the second round.
Okay, so let's be happy because the 10 years in between of that was brutal. Like, the Knicks fans were not seeing good product.
This has been a successful season. If you're the Knicks, I mean, you've got to be happy with what is happening. Would it suck to lose to the Heat? Absolutely. But I mean, considering where they were, I mean, we had a lot of question marks with them last season, but you look at them right now. I mean, they've got their guy. They got their point guard finally. It took 20 or 30 years, but we got our damn point guard in Jalen Brunson. You've got Randall, who I still like. I like Josh Hart. I mean, that was such an under the radar kind of pickup. He's been great. Barrett, I still think Barrett's going to be all right. Mitchell Robinson's a very solid center. Good defensive player, gets rebounds, blocks shots. I mean, so your foundation is kind of there. See, that's why if you're the Knicks, it wasn't the worst thing in the world if you didn't get Donovan Mitchell, because you would have had to trade those players, some of those players, to get him. The Knicks were not getting him for just draft picks. As much as we wanted that, as much as I said in the offseason here in Game On that I would have taken Donovan Mitchell if it was for draft picks, Danny Ainge was not going to do that. He was going to try and fleece the Knicks every way possible. Look at what he did with Rudy Gobert. Now, Gobert, he got 4 picks. Well, technically 5 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert, and look at the headache that's caused Minnesota.
Well, I would say that Danny Ainge is probably one of the top executives in all of the NBA who knows how to make these deals, knows how to negotiate. That's why the Celtics were so good for as long as they did. He also was kind of, I don't know if I want to say them. I would say it's technically Miami and the Celtics who really made that big 3 thing for about, 7-8 years really be a thing, where the Celtics got Garnett and Pierce and Allen and really didn't expend a lot of cap value or pick value through it. The Knicks, on the other hand, they were so obsessed over the last decade or to 15 years of, we want LeBron and we want Wade and we want Bosh, and they were willing to spend a king's ransom without even realizing it. And why do you think people made fun of the Knicks draft class over the last decade? Because they kept expanding picks on people they didn't need.
Now you look at this group. This, no coincidence. Barrett they drafted 3rd overall, and it turns out he might be the best guy of those 3. When you look at the fact that Zion can't stay on the court, and John Morant right now looks like he's in free fall mode, so they might have gotten the right one there. Mitchell Robinson, they drafted, solid guy there. Grimes, another draft pick, maybe he's part of the future too. Remember that was part of the thing too. They didn't want to give him up, or McBride either. So I mean, they're doing the right thing, and they finally got the point guard. So I trust what they're doing. I do trust Thibodeau, although some of his stuff has been questionable. I think you got to keep him there. I'm not a big fan of changing the coach every 3 years. I mean, it doesn't help with the development of the young players. I think Thibodeau's the right guy for New York, him in that sense, and you kind of need that now with how deep this Eastern Conference is.
I mean, the one thing I'll say about Thibodeau is he's a defensive-minded coach. That's just the fact of the matter of it. You're not going to see him drawing up offensive play schemes on that clipboard when they're calling timeouts. That's going to be whoever's in charge of running the offense. I thought he fit better with the Bulls because the Bulls were a defensive-minded team when he really was there. And those guys, they were offense but defense first. So it'll be curious because the Knicks don't play defense. And that's what kind of frustrates me watching them at times, where they're so focused on the offensive side of the ball, they forget, oh, wait, we got to get some stops on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, I think they have some guys. I mean, I think Robinson's a good defensive player. I mean, I don't think they have enough of it, but I think Robinson's at least a good start. And I like the fact that they extended him and they did not include them in that potential trade for Donovan Mitchell.
Well, I think Mitchell is way overvalued, in my opinion. I think, Mitchell's a good player. He's a star, but he was a star in Utah with Rudy Gobert. They both were good together. Now they're not together. Like you said, Minnesota's been a headache. And Cleveland, was good, but they have a lot to prove.
Yeah, and they're young though, Cleveland. That's why I actually liked him going to Cleveland, because they still got a good young team around him. Like some of his other younger stars there are younger players, like Mobley and Garland. I mean, they're young players, so Cleveland will be there for a while. So that's why I thought it was a better fit going to Cleveland.
And who was the guy from the Nets that they got in the trade?
Jared Allen.
I love him. I thought he was great. I was mad when the Nets traded him.
I agree. No, I know. But that's, it's funny because I think the Nets actually made out great with the Garnett trade. Jeez, I'm going back with those days. The Durant trade. So
yes.
So that's, we'll see. But the Heat do get past the Knicks, and we're in postmortem next week. It's been a successful season. Long term,
yes.
That's what you got to look at. It'll be frustrating, but at the same time, growing pains. That's what's going on. I think it's been successful.
I'll say one more thing. Knicks fans. It's been 10 years since you made a second round. 10 years. Just remember that.
They have been one of the worst teams in the 21st century in sports.
That's
right?
That's pretty accurate.
You look at every team in the NBA, in the NFL, in Major League Baseball, and the National Hockey League, and you tell me a team that's been worse than the Knicks. The only one I can think of off the top of my head in the NFL has been the Cleveland Browns. Right?
I mean,
there's how many others can you say? Tell me right now. You look at the Knicks resume and you tell me how many teams have been worse than the Knicks, who won one before this year, only got out of the first round once in the 21st century.
I can't think of much. Maybe Pittsburgh, the Pirates, maybe.
Well, maybe, but they had a 90+ win campaign one year. The Royals, you could say that they won a World Series.
Yeah, I was going to say you really can't do that.
Maybe you want to say the Pittsburgh Pirates, perhaps. I'll give you that, but this is bottom line is it's not many. They're right down there, bottom three. But yeah, so that's what's going on. And then the Lakers and the Warriors series that's going on right now. That series is just crazy because I look at probably the most inconsistent superstar in basketball in Anthony Davis, and both going. Then the Lakers are unstoppable. But there's a reason why I thought Golden State had one more shot in them too, because Thompson, Curry, and Green are going to give this one more ride. I really do. And even though they weren't that great in the Sacramento Kings series that they couldn't do a lot of in the regular season, that was win a road game, and they did it twice.
That was a heck of a performance last week by Stephen Curry with a 50-point performance, which you guys talked about last week against Sacramento on the road in Game 7. That was big. And that just goes to show you how big of a playoff performer Steph Curry is as a person. I'm not a fan of Draymond Green anymore. I think he's kind of on the other side of his playing career at this point. Don't get me wrong. Draymond Green will always go down as a guy that was aggressive defensively, clutch when needed. Maybe not the greatest person, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But this is a series of can AD stay healthy for the Lakers? And he's already run out of gas already through, what game are we up to? 4 or 5, actually?
Game?
4.
Yeah, they're playing Game 4 on Monday.
They got blown out in Game 3, the Warriors. That can't happen. And this is going to sound terrible to Laker fans. The Lakers are not a good team. They're not a good team. I know everyone's saying they have a chance to go to the NBA Finals. They're going to get destroyed by whoever's on the Eastern Conference side if they make it to the finals.
Well, it's funny because you look at the series. We've had a huge blowout by the Warriors in one game. We've had a huge blowout by the Lakers in one game. For the Warriors, it's you talk about the 3-point shot, and they made 21 3-pointers in Game 1 and 21 in Game 2.
They live or die by the 3-pointer. That's how it started. Why do you think the Warriors, for a stretch, 3 titles in 5 years or something they won?
Mm-hmm.
It's because they had Stephen Curry, who broke a record for threes in that time span, just was making them. He's a shooter. That's what Steph Curry is known for, being a shooter.
Yeah.
And when he doesn't shoot, they don't win.
And also, you got to control turnovers in Game 3 to the Lakers as well. I still think at the end of the day that I think Golden State's going to get out of this series, but it's something to watch here too. If Anthony Davis is so inconsistent, you realize that he's never had back-to-back 20-point games. It's not
crazy.
That's not a great star player doesn't have that.
And I hate to say this, but I'm not a big fan of AD. I never, even when he was, when he was with the Pelicans organization, which was really, I don't know, what were they before the Pelicans? I don't even remember what they were.
They were the New Orleans Hornets before they became the Pelicans, and then
he was really
back.
Yeah, he was really when the Hornets were a thing before they went bankrupt and whatnot. But AD has always been an inconsistent player. Always, he's always been hurt. He's always been an inconsistent guy. He's a star because he's 6 foot whatever and he can shoot for range. But he hasn't really shown that with the Lakers. And I know everyone's like, "Oh, well, the Lakers won." I don't give them credit for that championship. Come on, like it was in a bubble where everyone was on the same even footing, and that was when and that was when what was that? LeBron's first year or second year with the Lakers when they won in the bubble.
I believe it was his second.
That's when LeBron still had fresh legs, and he's not approaching 40 years old. And this team is old. It doesn't have the right pieces, and just doesn't fit as an organization. So I see the Warriors pulling this out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still think it's going to be Nuggets Warriors, and I'll tell you right now, if it's Nuggets Warriors, I think you got to give Golden State a huge advantage in that series because they're much deeper than Denver is.
I mean, if that's the case, Jokic is going to have to put up 80 points a game if they want a chance to win, which we all
still
know.
Might not be enough. But yeah, we'll find out. I think the conference finals should be set by next week's show, so we will definitely look into that a lot more next week as well. You know, we've got one more basketball story before we transition here, and Nick kind of brought it up a little while ago, but Mike Budenholzer, the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, and I had posed this actually on the show, I think it was last week too. Would Budenholzer's job be in trouble with the Bucks being eliminated as early as they were? And that's exactly what happened. And, you know, when you look at how successful they've been in the regular season, they haven't been able to transition that into the playoffs, Nick. I mean, I'm actually not really that surprised that Budenholzer got out.
Right. And the way I look at Budenholzer, first of all, I think this is unfair in every way, shape, or form. He didn't lose this series. They lost the series because Giannis was not healthy. So you can't blame this on him. You really can't blame this on him.
But still, I mean, when you have Giannis, when you have him there and you have Budenholzer, who was 271 and 120 in the regular season with the Bucks, but including 58 and 24 this year before they fell in 5 to the Heat. Now, granted, like you said, Giannis left game 1 early, missed games 2 and 3 with a bruised lower back. It's, you know, you can make the case that it could have been his fault. It could not have been. But I mean, when you're as successful as you are in the regular season and deep playoff run in any of those years, it's you almost could see them trying to have that coach who can be as consistent in the regular season and the postseason. It's hard to do.
But who are you bringing in there, though? He was a really good coach.
Nick Nurse, I think, is the first guy I think about right away. You know, Nick Nurse, who had success there in Toronto. Did have Toronto win a series or 2. I was surprised that Nurse didn't go to Houston when he was out there. And I know you were surprised when Nurse got fired in Houston. So, I mean, in Toronto. So couldn't you see that? He's probably he's the biggest name that's out there right now.
I mean, I think Nurse kind of dodged a bullet not ending up in Houston because that organization is going nowhere right now. And and you know what? Ime Udoka needs to suffer a little bit based on the allegations that went down with him. So let's just say Ime Udoka was lucky to get a job as soon as he did after the allegations went down. But Budenholzer is a good coach. He's not going to go without a job for very long. He will end up somewhere. I do think Nick Nurse would be a good fit in Milwaukee because he's already got championship pedigree from Toronto.
That's right.
So if you put him on a team where Giannis is the star and hopefully Middleton can come back and be healthy, then that could be a dangerous team with Nick Nurse being a head coach there.
Yeah. Now, with the Bucks, you know, Brook Lopez, who was the runner-up to Jaren Jackson Jr. in the Defensive Player of the Year voting, is a free agent. Chris Middleton could become a free agent if they don't pick up the $40.4 million option for next year. And Giannis 2 years plus a 2025-26 player option remaining in the Supermax deal that he signed in December of 2020. So really, when you look at it, how long is the Bucks window? It's not as long as you think. And of course, you know, the rumors are already coming out that, Giannis to the Knicks possibly. Guys, let's pipe that down, plees. Stop.
Yeah, seriously, stop.
Stop giving me hope once again. I mean, yeah, Nick should have probably skipped over Giannis. I mean, when he got drafted, but the rumors are always that these players go to the Knicks. Now, granted, I think the Knicks are a little bit of a better spot than they've been in the years past because they actually look better. There's players that are there, but it's not because it's New York. You know, that I hate to say it, but that notion is no longer in the NBA. It's no longer there really in sports in general. I mean, would it be nice? Yes, but Giannis has been injury plagued here these last couple of years, and depends on what kind of money you're going to give him. I mean, I'm not trying to knock him, but he's been kind of banged up here these last couple of years. So let's stop with the notion that Giannis is going to the Knicks. It'd be nice, but I'm talking about this for years and years and years. Remember the talk about KD going to the Knicks? They dodged the bullet there. Remember the possible rumors about Kyrie going to the Knicks? The Knicks dodged a major bullet there. Maybe the Knicks might be dodging something there too, but let's stop saying that, please, and stop giving me hope. I'm realistic. I know that the Knicks need to be building this from within. That's how they've been getting this done. Jalen Brunson wasn't the most attractive guy to bring in, and they brought him in, and it's worked out great.
I mean, I still think they overpaid to get Brunson a little bit because they were desperate to have a star. Don't get me wrong; he's played great, but when I look at
he's been a solid player.
He's been a solid player, yes.
Nick, that's part of the problem with the Knicks. There's still no star. Brunson's
that's the
solid.
problem.
Barrett, I thought, was going to be a star, but he took a step back this year. Julius Randle, let's be honest, not a star. Good player, not a star. So there's no star there yet.
I would say he's probably a B+ type guy. I wouldn't say he's an A or an A-. He's kind of like a B+ guy where he will go off the boards for 30 points a lot, but he's not going to be your leader. He's not going to lead a team to victory and say, rah, rah, let's go. Let's get this team going. It's not what he does.
I think B+ is a very solid grade for him. I would agree with you there. But as far as Milwaukee goes, I agree with you. I think Nick Nurse is the right guy. Budenholzer is going to find a job somewhere. Wouldn't be surprised, once you hear about another coach firing, I mean, he's going to be the top target.
I mean, the one thing I'll say, and then we can try to move around a little bit in topics, is that we need to stop with all these speculations with the Knicks and stars. If you've looked, again, I'm going to go back to the last 10, 15 years when every speculation we've heard about in the New York organization. LeBron, D. Wade, Bosh, Donovan Mitchell. I don't know. You can name any star. They have not come to New York. I mean, Carmelo came to New York because he wanted to be in New York for business opportunities. Let's be real here. I don't know if he really wanted to be with the Knicks, but that's where all his business opportunities were. Amari Stoudemire didn't want to be with the Knicks. That's just where the money was. And then it cost him anyway because of the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, they totally overpaid for him. And, sometimes it's hurt them, and sometimes they've caught a break.
And also...
It doesn't always work, That's what
right.
I actually think I know it sucked the last several years to do this, but I think the Knicks have been doing this the right way. Now, of course, now they've got a team or so, but you've got it now in such a loaded conference that's where that's the tough part right now.
Right. And by the way, people seem to forget this, what happened to Amari Stoudemire. Amari Stoudemire punched in a fire extinguisher glass, which pretty much ended his time with the Knicks.
Don't remind me about that in the playoffs. I think that was against the Miami Heat too, if I remember correctly.
But I'm just trying to point out to people that sometimes even overpaying for people, it doesn't work out.
It worked out in the first year, but after that, it was a painful process. Yes.
All right.
But yeah, so we'll see. Budenholzer is going to land somewhere. There's no question. And there will be somebody that's going to get fired or going to, leave.
Right.
And we'll see. So that's what's going on there with the NBA. But just keeping on the winter sports, we'll talk briefly about the NHL. I don't have Hank here today, so we'll go through this. We'll go through this quick. I can't believe the Florida Panthers. And again, this is the same thing we were talking about in the NBA. There's a reason why they got past the best team in the league in the Boston Bruins. They came back from 3-1 down. They came back from a 1-goal deficit in the final minute of Game 7, and are dominating the Maple Leafs 3-0. Kind of surprising, but at the same time, the Panthers last year had the most points in the league, so they've been building this team up.
Are we talking dark horse?
I'd say kind of, because when you look at the Eastern Conference, it was all about the Bruins. It was all the Bruins. It was the Hurricanes maybe being that second team. Panthers really were not talked about because nobody gave them a fighting chance in hell against the Bruins, and understandably so.
Well, if I remember one thing from the statistics, because I was looking around a lot of this stuff, wasn't it true that there was a 35-point difference between the Panthers and the Bruins when it came to total points?
Yes, it was one of the largest point differentials. That's why last week on Game On, I said that I think this was the biggest upset in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs because of point differential, because of how historic the Bruins regular season was. But that's what's so great about the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, it is so unpredictable. I've always said if you just get in, you have a chance. You know, if your goaltending does it, if you outscore. Now, the Panthers really haven't been doing this with goaltending. It's been more scoring because remember, I think they gave like 25 goals or so against the Bruins, but they scored 27 themselves. So they had to out-slug their way kind of.
But that was a 3-1 deficit, right?
It was a 3-1 deficit, and it was a one. They were down by a goal in the last minute of Game 7. They tied it up, and then they won it 7 minutes into overtime.
See, that's what's bizarre. And like, I'll ask you because I don't know anything about this. People were complaining that the NHL doesn't have a bye in the first round of their playoffs. And I'm like, wait a minute. You lost up 3-1 in a series. I don't care what sport you're talking about. If you lose up 3-1, that's on you as an organization.
Buys wouldn't really do anything.
They would have been the same thing. They would have had the same opponent.
I don't think, it wouldn't make that much. I mean, they have changed this around a little bit. I mean, the way the divisions are set up now and stuff, but I mean, I don't think I think if you would have an equal chance for an upset as you do in the regular season. You never know.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so the Panthers look like they're on their way unless the Maple Leafs can come back from 3-0 down, which I don't see. So looked like the Maple Leafs were able to get out the mountain of winning a playoff series for the first time in almost 20 years. But unless something crazy happens here, it looks like they're not going to be able to pass stage number 2 in that mountain. The Hurricanes lead the Devils 2-1. And again, this is kind of like the Devils against the Rangers. Rangers won games 1 and 2 pretty decisively, and then the Devils came back and won Game 3. Now, this one's a little different because New Jersey did score 3 goals in the first period and completely dominated Carolina 8-4. And you know what? I'll tell you what. I know Hank and I said this last week. We really didn't give Carolina a fighting chance here because they've been pretty banged up. But New Jersey not playing Kincaid, I should say Schmidt in the first game or so was kind of a surpriser. But then they came back to the Prudential Center, completely dominated them, and all of a sudden that in that one.
But, I mean, I just thought, by the way, 12 goals scored in a game.
Oh, we've had a lot of offense. You know, the Kraken beat the Stars 7-2 the other night. So we've had a lot of offense in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yeah, you usually don't see that. You usually see more of the lower scoring games, like 3-1, 2-1, 2-0, something like that. But no, we've had a lot of offense so far in the playoffs.
By the way, also, didn't the Devils start out 0-2 also against the Rangers?
Yep.
So I don't know. I guess the Devils are a glutton for punishment, I guess. But
well, yeah, I mean, you know, the one thing, give Lindy Ruff credit, is he's been able to make adjustments when they have to. You know, the Devils are still kind of a young team. You know, Jack Hughes is their star player that they drafted a couple of years ago, who's going to eventually become the captain of that team, if not already. He's been great. You know, they had Luke Hughes, who's like 19, play there, and he scored a goal and an assist on Sunday. So the Devils are right back at it. Pivotal Game 4 for them coming up. They want to make that a series. But, yeah, I mean, right now, you know, it looks like Carolina's – I mean, I say Florida is going to move on. The Hurricanes and the Devils, all of a sudden, that's a brand-new series. As much as it looks like it was Devils winning that game now, they're back at it. The Kraken leading the Stars 2-1. That's a little bit of a surprise now. In that series, we had a 4-goal performance from Joel Pavelski of the Stars, but that came in a losing effort. Dang. So again, it just goes to show you how offensive late in these playoffs have been, even in the second round, where we had a 4-goal score. We actually had that twice in the second round, and it hasn't been enough there for Dallas. As a fan, I'm hoping for the expansion conference finals where we would have the Kraken against the Golden Knights. But I've also said at the same time too, to me, and the Oilers and the Golden Knights are playing on Monday night, so that series will be different when this show airs. I still, to me, think the Oilers are the team that's going to come out of the West, because to me, they've got the star players. They've got Draisaitl, they've got Connor McDavid, but that, as we all know, that doesn't mean anything. When we've seen how this has been, we want to talk about goaltending. Goaltending's not been there in these playoffs.
Well, what's weird, though, is, and I look at the NHL a lot more and more lately over the last couple of years, I feel like the NHL is the most competitive, and I think you can almost throw the seeds out the window in the NHL playoffs at times. Because, again, we've already seen massive upsets already. We saw Colorado was defending champion out. I mean,
Yep, first round.
you saw the Bruins, who were what's it called, the President's Trophy winner, out. But I know there's not a great historical connection to the President's Trophy winner. So I think for the last decade, right? For the last decade,
the last decade, I think only one team has made it even to the conference finals.
So apparently that whole President's Trophy is more of a jinx than a good thing.
You know what, Nick? Like you said, it doesn't mean a darn thing. It doesn't matter if you're the 8th seed or you have 135 points in the regular season. You know what? The playoffs are totally different.
That's what I think makes the NHL playoffs actually more entertaining at times, because you're not surprised when a team sometimes upsets, because the playoffs are, I hate to say this, a crapshoot sometimes in the NHL.
I mean, it's the only other sport I could compare it to in terms of it being a total crapshoot. It would be college basketball, because it's a single elimination. Now that's totally different. That's single elimination. This is best of 7, but they're both things that you never know, because all it takes is one game in college hoops, and things could change. Hockey, if your goaltending's not there, and we saw one of the things also with the Bruins is they had to go to their backup goaltender in Game 7, and he gave up some very crappy goals. And we've seen goaltending has not been there. This has really been more of for the forwards, and that's why, if that's going to be the case, you almost would have to give the Oilers there the advantage, because they do have 100-plus point scores this season in Draisaitl and Connor McDavid.
Right, and I hope, like you said, like Kraken, Golden Knights, that would be a heck of a series. I think you'd have a lot of eyeballs on it, considering it's the last 2 expansion teams in the draft. So
that would be awesome. I mean, Seattle was long for a hockey team, and this is their second year, and they're there. Remember, the Vegas Golden Knights in their very first year in the league made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, they didn't win it, but they made it there. So
which
they
is
want
a
to
heck
try and
of
get
a
back
feat.
there again.
Yeah. So,
so I mean, right now, I think Florida's going to get in. Now that Hurricane Devil series is a brand new series, because the way Carolina had looked in the first 2 games, I thought they were going to steamroll their way, but New Jersey said not so fast, and they've been a resilient bunch there in New Jersey, as much as it pains me to say that. As I said, Lindy Ruff deserved a lot of credit for how he handled. I mean, he outcoached Gerald Gallant in that series, and the Devils had only had one real major losing streak during the season too, and that's a young team with some very good potential there. And Carolina is more the veteran squad, but they didn't seem to be as good as they were in years past. But we'll be fascinating. I think the Kraken and the Stars, I think, has 7-game potential. I think the Oilers and the Golden Knights has 7-game potential. But if I'm looking talent wise, and you really don't have to, because the playoffs are so unpredictable, the best offensive players of any of these teams are with Edmonton. What does that mean? Doesn't really mean anything. we won't know. But the Florida thing is pretty cool. So we'll find out what these series are like. I think these back here on next week on the show. One big hockey story, though, also that broke over the weekend, and Tom brought up in our group chat, and I was kind of surprised, and I wasn't surprised at the same time, and that was Gerald Gallant. A mutual parting of the ways, they're calling it, out as Rangers head coach. Well, so here's the thing. So Molly Walker, who she writes for, I think it's the New York Post. She's a hockey reporter too. She had tweeted out that some of the players in their exit interviews were kind of not happy at Gallant. Now, there was also a report that Gallant and GM Chris Drury got into it at the end of the season with something. Now, if that report is to be true, then I think there was no way Gallant was going to survive this. Now, do I think Gallant should have stayed after this year? I do, because I don't necessarily think this was all his fault. I do think that Lindy Ruff did outcoach him in the last round. And yes, was this year a disappointment from the Rangers side? Absolutely. When you look at the talent that they had and where they were last year, and look at how possibly the road back to the Eastern Conference Finals would have been. But I'm not sure really if Gallant should have been the one to taking the fall for all of this.
No, I agree with you. And also, you have to know who we're dealing with as an owner in this situation.
Yeah, I didn't want to really go down the James Dolan road and all this, but I mean, he could have some role in this as well.
Well, didn't you say, if I remember correctly, he kind of has a little more tug in the Rangers side, or he likes to be a little more involved in the Rangers side than the Knicks side?
It's the opposite. He usually does not. It's usually not much with him with the Rangers, and that's part of the reason they've actually been one of the more consistent teams in hockey since the lockout of 04 and 05.
I wish he would just be the checkbook for both organizations at this point. I know that sounds horrible and insulting to an owner, but the owner should just be writing the checks. All right, what do we need for this organization? What do we need to do? Let them decide.
But doesn't it feel like that he has kind of taken a step back, and there is kind of no coincidence that the fact that the Knicks are actually, you've had both teams in the playoffs for the first time together in such a long time.
Right, but at the same time,
it's not enough. But
why is Gallant out? This has to do something with Dolan. I would have to assume.
I think it's twofold. I mean, I actually think that that report from Molly Walker could have a role in it. But I think if it is true, the thing with Drury, I think definitely has a factor, because other than that, I know they had a down year, but I would not have gotten rid of Gallant.
But the thing Drury's the GM now, right? He was the former player. He's a GM. So if you look at the way the organization, both his organizations are run, look, he's had unconventional people at his GM spot for both organizations. I mean, heck, you had Phil Jackson being a GM of the Knicks organization. Look how bad that turned out. My point is,
Jeff Hornacek head coach. Oh God, we live in those days.
But my point is that he has unconventional people, so they're just going to do whatever they think is right, not what needs to be done for the team.
If you remember also how that situation with John Davidson, how they got rid of him with about a week to go in the season. But I think, though, that when you look at it, Dolan does not put as much stock on the Rangers as he does the Knicks. Now, that might have to do with financial reasons or whatnot. But again, you look at the Knicks. I mean, you look at the Rangers since the lockout of 04 and 05. They did have a rebuilding couple of years, but otherwise they've been in the playoffs almost every season. They've been one of the more consistent teams. That's why I know Hank last week had a rant for the ages, and if you didn't see that, go check it out after this episode. Go back to last week's show, episode 52. He had a rant for the ages, and I think it was in the heat of the moment, because if you look at the Rangers in the last, let's go almost 20 years, I mean, it's been a far cry from when the pre-lockout days, going from like 98 to 2004. And understand how I'm going to say this. The lockout of 04 and 05 was the best thing that happened to this organization. It sucked that we didn't have hockey for a year and everything else, but for the organization and for how they ran and how their successful has been, that was the best thing that happened to them, because it forced them to control their money and stuff. And that is what's going to make this offseason very, very important for the Rangers, because their salary cap is going to be kind of tight. So some of these guys that are free agents are probably going to be gone. I think Patrick Kane, he didn't look right at all for whatever reason.
Didn't he have 0 goals in the playoffs also?
A lot of them did. I mean, Artemi Panarin, who's making a lot of money, had 2 assists and was a -2. The Rangers, I think, scored 17 goals against the Devils, and 1/3 of them were from Kreider, who scored 5 goals in the first 2 games. Your big players didn't score.
Well, that's like any sport, though. If you don't score, you're not going to win. I mean,
yeah. So where this takes the Rangers is going to be a very busy very important off season for them, because, and I put this out in the group chat, and I know, and anybody who's a hockey fan will tell you this, the first name that everybody's going to point to for the Rangers is going to be Joel Quenneville. Now, with that being said, Darren Dreger put out a very good tweet about this 4 days ago. He still has to be cleared by the NHL before he returns. He was the Blackhawks head coach who was involved in a scandal, and he's still not been cleared by the league. I think what you're looking at, too, is you're probably going to look at maybe somebody in the Hartford Wolfpack, who's the Rangers minor league affiliate, and you might be going down that road.
But this is New York. Remember what you're saying here. New York makes a splash in their head coaching spots.
Yeah, but, the Rangers don't necessarily do that now. I mean, they did that with John Tortorella years back, but if you remember, they did have David Gordon, who was not really that well known for a while. So you would think that they would want to make a splash, but I think it's a little bit different when you look at this Rangers team, who does have some homegrown players. I think it's a little different. Joe Quenneville is probably going to be a name that's going to be brought up, but remember, he's got to be cleared by the league before he comes back here.
Which, I don't know if you're going to get that in time, clearance-wise. But who was the guy? I'm thinking of the guy in the Islanders. Trotz.
Barry Trotz would be... I mean, it could be. I don't see them going down that road, but I never thought about him.
Because I don't know how well his time was with the Islanders, but
It was good, but then they just couldn't get over the hump either. And Trotz does have playoff experience. Did win a cup with the Capitals. If he's out there, that wouldn't be a bad choice.
But the whole Tortorella thing, and I just remember that because I remember how loud he was.
I love Torts. Say what you want. Torts is a smart guy. He gets a bad rap sometimes because of how he handles his post-game conferences, but I like him a lot.
He has no filter. That's a fact for sure.
No filter when he's behind the podium, or he's getting those in-game interviews from whoever.
When they lose, he is a tough person to talk to.
He is, but he's also very honest, and I like that about Torts. You know what? Sometimes he could be too hard, and he maybe relies too much on the shot blocking, but I've always liked him. You know what? He went to Philadelphia. That team was just flat out awful. I mean, nobody was going to take Philadelphia over the top. So, I mean, it was very interesting to see him. That's the thing too. We know how Philadelphia likes, no tolerance guys. And I didn't think it was going to work out, but I'd love to see him there in Philadelphia, how he handled that. And you saw sometimes the in-game interviews and the post-game stuff wasn't pretty down there in Philadelphia, and especially when they were losing all that much.
I mean, I like exciting guys, but I don't think that's good for the Rangers organization by any means.
Well, yeah, I mean, they already had that run with Tortorella. I think my guess is going to be that it's going to be somebody from down in Hartford that did come in a couple of times during COVID, and the Rangers did put up a bunch of goals. I could see them going down that road. Maybe not the conventional road, but I could see them doing that. But Gallant being out as he was, I think is a bit of a shock. But then again, if the reports are true, then maybe it really isn't.
I just hope they don't go big splash and then it affects them. See what happens.
Splashes, remember, again, a bunch of free agents, salary cap situation kind of tight. Their Eastern Conference still not that great. So you still do have an opportunity here if you're the Rangers. You may have to change that roster around a little bit, but you've got your goaltender. You've got your star players there like Zibanejad, Kreider. I would bring back Tarasenko. I think Kane is gone. You do have you guys. Panarin's another one too. You got a foundational piece there.
Hopefully they figure it out.
I think they will. I trust them. They've been doing this for a while now. Again, 20 years almost in the playoffs every year. A couple of rebuilding years, but I do trust them, but it's going to be a different road there for the Rangers, and we'll find out what they can do. That's going to be a very, very important thing, and I'm sure once we get there, Coach, we will definitely talk about it here on Game On. Nick, we haven't spent a lot of time on baseball this year. We've been, a lot of time bashing good old Rob Manfred and understand it, but I do want to talk about the Yankees because, this Carlos Rodon thing, and I know you and Hank did a live stream, breaking news live stream when the Yankees signed him. But, boy, I'll tell you, we are still waiting for him to make his Yankees debut, and I think it's going to be a while because this situation with him, it's been problematic. Originally,
whenever you hear the word chronic, that's a problem.
The first person I thought about when we were talking about this is, you remember Mike Trout had the chronic back problems? Now, he's back. He's playing all right. He's still the Mike Trout of old, but, you never know. But this concerns me because we're talking about a guy who's already had Tommy John surgery, who's already had elbow problems, and continues to get delayed further and further. And, it's different when it's a pitcher.
Yeah.
And
it definitely is different as a pitcher because, again, excuse me, they put a lot of money into this guy. A lot.
Yeah.
And they're not getting anything from him. They really need him in the worst way possible. But whenever they put the word chronic in front of anything, that means that it's there until his career is basically done.
Unfortunately, as much as I like to defend Brian Cashman, the pitching luck for him the last couple of years has not been great. Making the trade for Montaz and Trevino. Montaz may not pitch this year.
He's lost for the year, I think.
And Trevino's having Tommy. So that's not going to work. But ironically enough, pitching hasn't been the problem with the Yankees so far this year. It's been the fact that they just, can't score and can't hit.
Well,
you look at that lineup, it's like,
yeah, it doesn't help that
no.
Judge and Stanton are out of the lineup. It'll be interesting to see if by the time I go to Toronto next week, if either Stanton or Judge are back. I doubt it.
Judge is supposed to be back on Tuesday night. Stanton is still a ways away. Donaldson's still not there yet. But you knew that when you got these guys that this was going to be the case.
And by the way, Tom, who also said it well when we were doing ETB, that the Rays games are a big thing. Like they were playing them like 6 games in 10 days or something with the Rays, and they just were not beating them.
Nick, that game on Sunday
was brutal.
Was the worst game of the season. I mean, you're up 6-0. Ace
and you don't beat them.
Cold on the mound. That game. It's like now I don't want to overreact. We're going to do what we did last year on the show. We're going to have a major league checkpoint. We're going to spend a good amount of time on baseball doing our checkpoint, probably around Memorial Day, if not right afterwards. I have to tell you this, and I don't think it's going to be popular. I think Aaron Boone is doing a tremendous job this year. Because if you look at this roster, the fact that he's got this roster just about 500 is actually incredible. The pitching's been fantastic. There's no doubt about it. But you tell me right now, I'm going to read you a list of the Yankees that are hurt. And I know some of them are going to be coming back. But listen to these names of these players. I put this in our group chat a week ago. But listen to these names. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Carlos Rodon, Luis Severino, Harrison Bader, even though he's back, Josh Donaldson, Frankie Montas, Jonathan Loizaga, Tommy Kahnle, Lou Trevino, Ben Roivert, Scott Efros, Luis Heel.
You can't win that way. If you're just going to be a mount of injuries, you're not going to win.
Now, the problem the Yankees are going to have this year. Now, remember, last year they got off to such an unbelievable start. I mean, I think at this time last year they had an 8-game lead.
They had a cushion. That what took them all the way to the end. And they had injuries too. That was another problem.
But the difference this year is this division is strong, is deep. Not only is it the Rays, and I don't expect them to be playing 28-7 baseball for the rest of the season, but you still have the Rays. You've still got the Blue Jays, who I know you're going to see next week. You've got the Orioles, who I got to tell you, I think the Orioles are legitimate. I don't think this is a fluke. I think they've got some good, young, scrappy guys there. We know about Rutschman, the catcher. We know they got that guy. I think it's Henderson, the young kid. I think he's a third baseman.
Yeah,
he's
the big prospect.
He's very good.
Up. Yeah,
and I hate to say this, as much as I can't stand the Red Sox and I don't like their team, they are going to be a spoiler in some days. They are not, they are not going to be the team that, I thought was going to lose 100 games and be lifeless. There are times that they are going to put up runs this year and annoy some teams.
But I think they're playing way better for now than people thought. I think eventually they're going to come down a lot more.
I think so too, but every now and then, they're going to run into a night where they're going to score 10 runs.
Right, but their pitching is going to be a struggle.
That's what made the game on Sunday so bad. Because, Cole's pitching, and he's been pretty much like the Cy Young Award winner so far, the MVP for the first month or so of the season.
Oh, let me ask a question. So, with a 6-0 lead in Gerald Gallant, about what percentage do you give that there's a loss there?
You don't want me to be like the graphic that they put on the TV about, or the win probability percentage, right? Rob Manfred's loving this right now.
I mean, no, you mean that stupid graphic where they say it's 0.2%?
Well, forget it. That's not even now Apple TV Plus. That's pretty much everywhere. That's on ESPN, even MLB Network at times does
yes.
it. To answer your question, I would have put it at 98%.
I mean, it's so funny now because they're like when a pitcher throws a fastball and it gets hit out of the ballpark. Well, on a 2-1 pitch with 2 outs in this inning, the percentage is, and I feel like they just randomize her and just throw it up there on the screen.
The thing is, here's the thing. It's like the Apple TV thing where they had that thing in the lower right-hand corner. And, I love the people who are part of Apple TV, but those graphics and the fact that you can't see the games on regular TV it's just too much.
Right.
That's just, I think it's for gambling purposes. That's what it is, because you don't see that in any other sport. You don't see in basketball, at least not yet. The win percent, the chances of Steph Curry making this 3-point shot. It's not happening, guys.
At this minute of this quarter, at this point of the game, like, no, stop.
I'm not going to be a sports fan anymore if they're going to keep doing that.
And by the way, and this is going to sound awful because, again, you and I are baseball fans, but I basically ignore the Wednesday games during the Yankees season.
Oh, because of the
Amazon.
No, and that's too.
I have Amazon. I could watch the games if I technically wanted to.
But it's getting to be very, very difficult with that. But here's what I would say about the Yankees. I think at some point they're going to, take off. They've had years in the past where they've gotten off to these slow starts and they get it going. But
right. I think this team is in trouble, though, until they can figure out the offense. It's not the pitching. The pitching is actually pitching halfway decent.
Well, the thing is, I mean, you look at their lineups, and I'm like, how are they supposed to do this? Actually, their offense have actually been better these last couple of days. But I mean, when you look at their lineup, I mean, how did they get
Franchi Cordero is in the lineup? I mean,
just look at some of these names. I mean, you have days where DJ LeMahieu was batting cleanup.
I mean, here's another issue, and for some reason the Yankees will not address it. Aaron Hicks needs to be DFA'd.
I don't know why he's still there.
Because the Yankees are trying to prove a point. Hey, we don't need to get rid of people. We want to keep people for cheap.
Well, Hicks is making $10 million a year.
Well, that's considered cheap on a contract side, if you think about it. Most guys are making 20, 30, 40 million now.
And my fellow friends and Yankee fans, stop bringing up Jason Dominguez. He is not ready yet.
He will
be there, but he is not ready yet.
It's not that much of a panic. Yankee fans are panicking up the wazoo. And by the way, Yankees fans should be concerned because the offense is not hitting right now. And Aaron Judge is hurt and Stanton is hurt.
Yeah.
But this is normal for the Yankees at this time of the year, pretty much.
They do this a lot. It's just, I think the difference is just the lineup does look weak and the division's just tougher. That would be my one concern. Is Orioles who you could feast on, or you could have maybe in the old days the Blue Jays or so, but
even the Rays
good and you could play them more. Now you're not playing those teams as much as in years past.
I think all the divisional series are down -3, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, I think they're only playing 13 times instead of the 19.
Oh, was it more?
It's more.
I thought they said that each divisional rivalry series, because those are usually 19, 20 games, I thought they just shaved off 3 each.
I think they one series each, home and away, so that's 6 right there.
Which means the Yankees don't have as much ground, or going to have the ground to make up stuff.
Like I said, we'll do a checkpoint at the end of this month or into June, and we'll see where they are. They do this a lot, and it's such a long season. I mean, it's the same thing with the Mets. I think a lot of people are overreacting, but we will get to that at some point. Nick, I love horse racing. I love talking about the Triple Crown. I always look forward to the first Saturday in May every year. You've got the Kentucky Derby. Well, this year, before even race day, you were getting all of these scratches, and then the day of, you find out that Forte, who was the favorite, was scratched, and this ended up becoming the shortest field in a few years for the Derby. And Mage did win the 149th Derby. Now, this was a field of 18, and you say that, and you saw horses coming off the also eligibles list like 22, 23, and 24. But, the big thing with this is, and, Churchill Downs, with what's been going on with the horse deaths.
Yeah, no, this was a fun event. Obviously, the massive concern. I don't know if we want to flip banners here and talk about that, but the race was good. I always think the Kentucky Derby is interesting every year, but you get all these headlines, and I guess as we're going to talk about, we kind of really need to talk about this, which is 7 horses passing away in recent days at Churchill Downs.
Yeah,
and I remember seeing it in the AP. By the way, the AP did a really good job on breaking this whole situation down story-wise. But this should be a massive concern. if you're a horse racing fan and at one of the biggest events, I don't know, the Derby, I guess, would be considered the biggest out of all the majors, right? In that regard.
Yeah.
So 7 horses. We're not talking about 1. We're not talking about 2. We're talking about 7. Not that, first of all, no horses should be dying before the race. That let me say that first and foremost. We had the incident with Bob Baffert, who was ironically came off his 2-year suspension after the Derby was over.
Yeah,
so
that suspension wasn't long enough, by the way, but I digress.
Oh no, I don't think he should have been allowed to come back. That's my whole opinion on it. But I don't know. What do you make of the 7 horses, though?
So 2 of them died on Derby Day itself, and Forte was scratched the day of. So Chloe's Dream, a 3-year-old gelding, Freezing Point, a 3-year-old colt, were injured in their races on the Derby undercard. Now, when I think of this, the first thing I could think about is it has to do something with the track condition.
Yes.
Because if you remember, I don't know if you do remember this, but there was a few years ago, Santa Anita, a track out in California, had horses dying a lot on the training track, during the races themselves. And I think they determined that there was like a track condition or something. They actually shut the track down for a bit to try and straighten it up.
Was that the one that closed and basically they had to do major renovation and basically they stopped, like, I think it was like a year plus, wasn't it?
I don't think it was that long, but it was a little bit of time that they had to close it down and do this. So when you look at Churchill Downs said in a statement Saturday night, there has been no discernible pattern detected in the injury sustained. But just look at the horses just on Saturday alone. Chloe's Dream suffered a fractured right front knee while leaving the first turn during Saturday's second race. Freezing Point pulled up inside the 6 furlong marker with a left ankle injury during the 8th race. That was on Saturday.
This is bizarre, and you would know this better than me, but the training is very important on the horse racing aspect of stuff.
That would be the next thing I would say as you continue to read this story and investigate it. 2 of the horses that died earlier in the week were, and this actually is something else you hear about. Safe Joseph Jr., a trainer, suspended, although investigators have yet to determine causes for the death of the horses. And the thing is, this is becoming a big problem. The sport has already been dealing with doping suspensions and breakdowns, and now you've got this on top of it. It's not good at all.
I mean, I'm not going to say that saying because that's a horrible thing to say now. But what I was going to say is, when you look back at Baffert and you look at, I just remember how ridiculous the excuse he made was with Medina Spirit.
Yeah.
Where like it was a whole thing where the horse ate the hay and like the whole nonsense. And what did he say? Like that the horse basically urinated on the hay and then ate it. Yeah. And I'm like, come on, really? And he got suspended because, again, Baffert, and I don't know who I was telling about this the other day. Baffert reminds me of the Patriots organization.
Yes.
Because the Patriots were bending rules to basically do whatever it took to win. Baffert is the same way. He basically was stretching rules to get by. And people don't remember. It didn't happen before the race. And I was asking a bunch of questions about this the other day. If he failed the post-race drug test, how did he get on the course to even be in the race?
I don't know how they do it in the beginning. But you look at the horses that have died and have been pulling up lame and stuff like that. Some of them have been during training, but the training track, I believe, for the most part, when they train, it's on the same track. So I'm just putting my investigative mind together. There's got to be a track condition that's going on here.
I agree.
That's where I'm starting to think about. And if they find that out, then, Churchill's going to be shut down. Now, they don't race Churchill Downs. They don't race year round there, but they're definitely going to have to do something. And again, I remember with Santa Anita, this happened over there too, where they had to shut it down and they had him. Knock on wood, everything's been all right over there. But I kind of think that's where we're going at with this.
I mean, long story short, 7 horses.
Well, it was bad enough when it was 4, and then you have 2 more the day of the Derby.
And also, what's different about the horse racing side of things. A lot of times, it's injuries that lead to euthanizations.
Euthanization, yep.
So it's not like they just died. Like that's unfortunately the name of the game in the horse racing business. Like you get hurt and they can't be used anymore, and then it's an awful situation. But I don't know. I think Churchill Downs is eventually going to get shut down, at least temporarily, until they figure out what's going on.
By the way, the first time that as many as 5 horses had been pulled from the Kentucky Derby since 1936.
It's a rarity.
And the 18 horses was the smallest field since the 2020 Derby, which ran in September because of the pandemic, and it featured just 15. So
I think we're going to hear more about this eventually.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an investigation that's going on, but it's definitely not a good look. And horse racing is a sport that's been like I said, mired in controversy with the Baffert stuff, and unfortunately, the injuries that these equine athletes have been dealing with here. And again, when I read the article, and me personally, somebody who likes watching horse racing, when I try and put 2 and 2 together, when they're telling you that it's training, as much as you want to maybe put on the trainers, to me, there's got to be a track condition. I think that's what it's pulling up as.
Right. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. 7 horses is a lot. And again, it's also ironic that Bob Baffert's suspension ended after the Derby. So
there was another trainer that was suspended. We talked about Sapphire Joseph Jr. He was suspended the sudden death of his 2 horses, while Lord Miles, who was trained by Joseph, was scratched from the Derby. So it's an indefinite suspension which prohibits him or any trainer directly or indirectly employed by Joseph from entering horses in races or applying for stall occupancy at all Churchill Downs Incorporated racetracks.
Damn. Wow.
And he's a 36-year-old third-generation trainer.
Damn.
But that makes you wonder that it's training that's doing that.
Right. We'll see.
So I don't know. I mean, again, my feeling is telling me that this is going to be that this has to do with a track condition.
Right. We'll see what happens.
But yeah, no, absolutely. But a very sad thing after the Kentucky Derby, which is supposed to be a very festive day, and it still was. But of course, this was in your minds as well. And definitely, if you're a gambling person or a wagering person on horses, I mean, it's definitely shook up the Derby with the favorite Forte, who had won 5 straight races going into Saturday, being scratched. But yeah, and we don't know now. They said it's still up in the air if he's going to race Preakness in 2 weeks on the 20th. But yeah, we'll see. Kind of a sad way, but the race was still good, and we'll find out Mage if he's going to run in the Preakness in 2 weeks. We'll see if there's anything special. Yeah, we'll definitely find out some more. And if there's more information, if there's anything legitimate, I mean, if there's any big news that comes out of this, we will definitely let you know, and we will mention here on Game On. But that's going to put a wrap on episode 53 of the show. That seemed like it went by really quick, but that's what it always does. There is one scheduling thing we do want to tell you about before we get out of here. So without knowing any information right now as we're recording this, but the 2023 NFL regular season schedule will be officially released on Thursday. So we will get answers to some questions. We were talking about it, a little behind the scenes here. We were talking about it in our group chat. There was, Nick, you might even mentioned it on ETB last week, from Brian Baldinger, that he brought up the possibility that it could be Jets-Giants in week 1, which as a Giants fan, I have no problem trying to get the Jets out of the way. We have bigger and more important things to deal with than the Jets. So I have no problem. You want to get that out of the way in week 1, but some scheduling changes to watch for on Thursday. NFL's going to have a Black Friday game for the first time ever. We knew about that when that report came out last year. So when you're going Black Friday shopping, you come back and check out Amazon Prime, and they'll have a Black Friday game. Games don't necessarily belong to networks anymore. All games are free agents, so something to watch there. On Thursday Night Football twice, so something there. And not all teams are guaranteed to have a primetime spot. So those are some good nuggets from Adam Schefter regarding the schedule this season. So, when we do our football picks come this upcoming season, that's what you'll have to watch. So schedule comes out officially on Thursday. It gets released at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's when the schedule will come out. I think it's on ESPN or 2 and the NFL Network. Just a couple of highlights. The season schedule will feature 14 playoff rematches from last season, which is the most in a season in NFL history, including rematches of the Super Bowl, Chiefs-Eagles, both conference championship games, Bengals-Chiefs and 49ers-Eagles, and all 4 divisional games, Bengals-Bills, Jaguars-Chiefs, Cowboys-49ers, and Giants-Eagles.
It's not bad.
So that's what's going on. Yeah, I mean, we know the opponents, but now we'll finally put the schedule together. So we will react to that next week here on the show. So you can see we're already starting to plan out episode 54 as we wrap up episode 53. But that's going to put a wrap on the show for us. Of course, funny ways for you to interact with us even post-show and leading into the future. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter at GameOnETB, Instagram, GameOn_ETB. Our personal handles right there. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. If you like today's episode, leave us a like. If you're new, hit the subscribe button, and of course, have your notifications set so you can know when all of our programming is coming out. Also, check out our website, etbpodcasts.com, where you can check out all of our shows. You can check out great blog posts like from my co-host Hank and Dichter on there as well. And you can also check out our shows on our audio-only platforms on Apple, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We were going to be on there as well. So, Nick, good to see you. Thanks for filling in today.
This was fun. We got through a lot today.
Absolutely. That's what Game On is always about. There's always something going on. And you can catch, of course, Nick along with Tom Albano over on Empty the Bench on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, where I will be on a week from Thursday. Just a little shameless plug there. And all that good stuff. You can also check out Tom, of course, with Zan over on the MMA Outsiders as well. And Nick, since I won't see you next week, have a great time up in Toronto.
No, I'm going to have fun. It's the first time I've seen the Yankees outside of New York.
Absolutely, and you deserve a nice little trip up there. So, for Nick Morgasen, everybody have a great week, and we'll catch you again on Game On next week.